The last case of Detective Mills. The rain never stopped in this city. It crept into the bones, soaked into the streets, and made every day feel like it was on the edge of something dark. For Detective David Mills, that darkness was something he had chosen to fight. He had transferred here with his wife, Tracy, believing in a fresh start, a real shot at making a difference. Instead, he found himself standing in a dimly lit apartment, the air thick with decay, staring at a body that had long since stopped breathing. Gluttony, said Somerset, his new partner, an old, weary detective who had seen too much. The victim had been force fed until his insides burst, his bloated corpse a grotesque warning. A single word had been scrawled near the body: gluttony. Mills didn't like Somerset. The man carried himself like he had already given up, like the world had beaten him down so many times he stopped bothering to fight back. Mills, on the other hand, was here to make things right. He wasn't going to let this city turn him into another tired old man, counting the days until retirement. But then came the second body, a puzzle of sin. It was different, but just as brutal. An attorney found dead in his office. His body was twisted, self-inflicted wounds across his flesh, and a word smeared in blood near him: greed. Two bodies, two sins. This was no ordinary killer. This was someone methodical, someone patient. The case consumed them. Day after day, clue after clue, they followed his trail. Sloth, a man kept alive for a year, strapped to a bed left to rot in his own filth. Lust, a woman carved apart in a seedy motel, the killer forcing a man to play a part in her torture. Mills felt the weight of it pressing down on him, but he refused to slow down. Unlike Somerset, he wasn't going to let this monster slip through his fingers. Then pride, a woman whose beauty had been her identity, forced to disfigure herself or die. Somerset looked at Mills and saw what was happening. This job was consuming him, twisting him up inside. You can't win against this, Somerset had said one night, the weight of years in his voice. You just try to survive it. Mills didn't listen. He never did. The killer reveals himself. The break in the case wasn't one they found. The killer turned himself in. John Doe. He walked into the station, blood on his hands, calm as a man checking into a hotel. Detectives, he said, his voice unnervingly measured. I'd like to speak with you. There were still two sins left: envy and wrath. He would show them where the last two victims were, if they went alone, unarmed, to a remote location. Somerset knew it was a mistake. Mills didn't care. He needed this to end. They drove into the desert, the sun beating down, the city fading behind them. A delivery van approached. Mills' fingers twitched near his gun. The driver stepped out, shaking, afraid. He had been paid to deliver a package, nothing more. Mills opened the box. His heart stopped. Blood, blonde hair, something small, something lifeless inside. Tracy, Somerset knew before Mills did. John Doe's quiet words confirmed it. I took a life because I envied yours. I coveted what you had. That's why I represent envy. Mills' hands shook. His breath was gone. His mind was a blur of rage and grief. Somerset stepped forward, voice calm but desperate. David, if you kill him, he wins. He wants this. He planned this. John Doe just smiled. Mills raised the gun. The final sin. A single gunshot echoed across the desert. Mills had become the last sin in John Doe's grand masterpiece. Somerset watched as Mills was taken away, his eyes hollow, his face twisted in something beyond sadness. The case was over. But the city, the rain, the darkness, they would never stop. And Somerset, old and weary, knew he wasn't done yet. I'll be around, he said, even if it was a fight that could never be won. That's safe.